In this video, I'll share with you a list of environmentalists who will inspire you to act on climate. We'll talk about where the focus of their work lies, and as well how you can begin to engage with, support, and sample some of their work. It's thanks to the leadership that these people exhibit as to why the environmental movement not only has hope, but continues to gain it despite seemingly overwhelming opposition. Let's dive in. First, we have Bill McKibben. Bill McKibben is an American environmentalist, author, and founder of the organizations 350.org and Third Act. 350.org was founded in 2008 with one simple goal: build a global grassroots climate movement to spur the end of the fossil fuel era. Third Act is an organization founded to mobilize people over 60 for action on climate and racial justice. Bill is responsible for writing some of the earliest books on global warming for the general public, most notable perhaps The End of Nature. You can get to know Bill's work by signing up for his newsletter, The Crucial Years, or as well reading one of his recent long-form articles in The New Yorker titled In a World on Fire, Stop Burning Things. Next, we have Dr. Ayana Elizabeth Johnson. She's a marine biologist, an author, and as well a podcast host. She co-founded the Urban Ocean Lab, which is a nonprofit organization committed to supporting coastal cities as leaders in climate and ocean policy. She also co-founded the All We Can Save Project, which is another organization that is supporting women leading in the climate movement. She's also the co-creator and co-host of the podcast How to Save a Planet, where her hopes are to leave listeners inspired on a mission to save our home planet. You can get to know Dr. Johnson's work by sampling her podcast, or as well checking out a recent op-ed article that she wrote for The Guardian with film director Adam McKay. Then there's Leah Thomas. Leah Thomas is an environmentalist, writer, and founder of Intersectional Environmentalist. Leah's work focuses on exploring and educating on the relationship between social justice and environmentalism. She's responsible for creating the term intersectional environmentalism. Leah firmly believes we can't save the planet without uplifting the voices of its people, especially those most often unheard. This quote from Leah's recently published book, The Intersectional Environmentalist, which I highly recommend you check it out if you're curious in learning more about her work. Then we have Kate Williams, the CEO of 1% for the Planet. 1% for the Planet is a nonprofit organization originally founded by Patagonia founder Yvon Chouinard and founder of Blue Ribbon Flies, Craig Matthews. Since its founding in 2002, 1% for the Planet has grown into a global movement of businesses, nonprofits, and individuals working together to address the world's largest environmental problems. Kate, previously an outdoor educator and executive director, has been the CEO of 1% since 2015. She's also been a guest on our podcast where she graciously shared how everyone has their own 1% for the planet.
Recognize that we all have a 1%, and that may be financial, it may be time, it may be energy, but if everyone thinks about how they can give their 1% every day, we are just the most unstoppable force, because you put all those 1% together and it makes a whole lot.
You can get to know the full extent of Kate's work by listening to my interview with her, or as well diving deeper into the mission of 1% for the planet. Then there's Yvon Chouinard. Yvon Chouinard is the original founder of the wildly successful outdoor retail brand Patagonia. At heart, an outdoorsman, a rock climber, surfer, fly fisher, and I'm sure many other things, Yvon has long been a champion for the environmental responsibility of business. Although Yvon is not still at the helm of Patagonia, his personal credo has shaped the company into the environmental leader it is today. Patagonia, without a doubt, is one of the first publicly recognized responsible companies. And as well, you can make the case that the company is responsible for birthing a whole new generation of sustainable businesses and business leaders. I highly recommend getting to know Yvon's work by reading his book, Let My People Go Surfing: The Education of a Reluctant Businessman. This is an excellent distillation of his personal and professional philosophies, which have become the seed of the company that Patagonia is today. Next, we have Varshini Prakash. Varshini Prakash is the executive director and the co-founder of the Sunrise Movement. The Sunrise Movement is a youth-led organizing effort to call for political action on climate change. Their goal? Mobilize 3.5% of the US population, roughly 11 million people, to actively participate in the movement to call on the American government to act aggressively on climate, curb emissions, and create millions of well-paying jobs in the process. You can get to know Varshini's work by checking out this video here, where she explains how the Sunrise Movement can help win a Green New Deal. Or as well, you can pick up the book which she co-authored on the same topic, Winning the Green New Deal, Why We Must, How We Can. Then we have Leah Penniman. Leah Penniman is a farmer, author, and food sovereignty activist. Food sovereignty is a food production system where those who make and consume the food also control the food system itself. This in contrast to a corporate-controlled food system where multinational corporations hold the power. Leah founded Soulfire Farm in New York, which is an Afro-Indigenous centered community farm committed to uprooting racism and seeding sovereignty in the food system. Soulfire Farm's programming is now reaching over 160,000 people per year. They offer training for potential Black and brown farmers, workshops, education for policymakers, and much more. You can get to know Leah's work by checking out her feature in the Washington Post, or as well picking up her book, Farming While Black. And now we have Paul Hawken. Paul Hawken is an environmentalist, an entrepreneur, and an author. He most recently wrote the book Regeneration, Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation, and he as well founded an organization that in part shares the same name. Before Regeneration, Paul edited Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. Paul's latest organization, Project Regeneration, is about providing an action plan for all levels of society to take part in ending the climate crisis and creating a future that prioritizes all life in any and all decisions and actions. Paul joined me on the podcast to talk about his latest book, his vision for the future of the climate movement, and how as well we all can get involved. You can get to know Paul's work by checking out my interview with Paul on ending the climate crisis in one generation, or as well picking up his book, Regeneration. Then there's Greta Thunberg. Greta, of course, is a name I'm sure we all recognize by now, but this list wouldn't feel complete without her addition. Greta's public climate activism began with her school strikes for climate back in 2018 when she was just 15 years old. At the time, she hadn't yet rallied the support of classmates or peers, but she continued along herself. But quickly enough, by late 2018, Greta's demonstrations inspired others all across Europe. Apparently, from that very first demonstration in August, by October of that same year, 20,000 students had likewise demonstrated in 270 towns and cities all across the globe. Since then, Greta has continued to advance the climate movement in a variety of capacities. She's received dozens of awards, spoken at countless climate conferences, and as well, she continues to inspire people of all ages to join in the fight to save our planet. Jump into Greta's work by sampling her TED Talk, which maybe made her a household name, or as well picking up a collection of her speeches in No One is Too Small to Make a Difference. Then we have Dr. Jonathan Foley, the executive director of Project Drawdown. Project Drawdown has established itself as perhaps the world's leading resource of climate solutions. Dr. Foley himself is an environmentalist, climate scientist, a writer, and public speaker. His body of research has made him one of the top 1% most cited scientists globally. To get to know Dr. Foley's work, I recommend checking out his blog, Global Eco Guy, or as well following him on Twitter directly. Now we have Elizabeth Whitlow, the executive director of the Regenerative Organic Alliance. The Regenerative Organic Alliance is behind the creation of the Regenerative Organic Certification, or ROC, label. This is perhaps one of the latest and most robust certifications created as means to measure and verify the impacts of the food and agricultural industry. Elizabeth joined me for a podcast recording to talk about the future of farming and agriculture. She's insistent, and for good reason, that the health of our soil represents the health of us. Get to know Elizabeth's work by checking out my full interview with her on the future of farming. And now we have Annaïse Heglar and Amy Westervelt. These two are co-hosts and co-creators of the podcast Hot Take. Mary, a climate essayist, and Amy, a climate reporter. The two launched this podcast to add a feminist, race-forward lens to the discussion around the climate crisis. Mary is an exceptional storyteller in the climate movement, and Amy, as a journalist, has honed the skill set of being able to translate complex scientific climate reporting into language that the wider public can connect with. Each have an impressive list of published works from the Rolling Stone to the Boston Globe, The Nation, and many more. And now their podcast Hot Take has been picked up by one of the largest podcast networks today, Crooked Media. You can get to know Mary and Amy's work by, of course, checking out the podcast Hot Take or following each of them individually on Twitter. And now we have Svanika Balasubramanian, the co-founder and CEO of Repurpose Global. Repurpose Global is a plastic action platform which allows the business community to measure the impact of their plastic waste and take action to reduce or mitigate it. With her co-founders, Svanika first conceived of the idea for Repurpose as their thesis project in college. Since officially launching the organization, Repurpose has launched impact projects in 8 different countries. They're actively removing over 14 million pounds of plastic waste each year and helping to avoid over 700,000 kilograms of CO2 emissions annually. Svanika and her team have set the ambitious goal of preventing the creation of, recycling, and recovering 500 million pounds of plastic waste from nature by 2030. You can get to know Svanika's work by checking out our podcast recording together, where she talks about how businesses can go plastic neutral, or as well, take a listen to her TEDx talk on imperfect progress. And now we have Naomi Klein. Naomi Klein is an author, activist, and professor of climate justice at the University of British Columbia in Canada. Naomi is also the co-director of the Center for Climate Justice at the same institution. Klein is a staunch critic of capitalism, corporate globalization, and their effects on the climate. She's an award-winning journalist, and many of her books have earned best-selling honors. Get to know Naomi's work by checking out her first book with the climate-intensive lens, This Changes Everything, Capitalism versus Climate. And now we have Winona LaDuke. Winona LaDuke is an environmentalist, an indigenous rights activist, a writer, and she was even a former vice presidential candidate on the Green Party ticket with Ralph Nader. LaDuke is also the co-founder of the Honor the Earth organization. This is an advocacy organization committed to raising awareness and building support for Native environmental issues. Through her work with Honor the Earth, LaDuke advocates for what she calls a just transition, a shift from the egregiously exploitative, unequal fossil fuel economy to an economy that is environmentally sustainable and socially equitable and just for all. Get to know Winona's work by checking out Honor the Earth or watching this quick video from Now This that briefly summarizes her career of environmentalism and activism. Next, we have Eric Holthaus. Eric Holthaus is a meteorologist and the founder of Currently, a service created to offer critical and timely weather information in this time of climate emergency. As weather conditions change and become more dangerous and volatile, Holthaus created Currently to offer weather-hit communities support and hopefully safety in their time of need. Holthaus is also the founder and the writer of the newsletter Phoenix, where he hopes to offer a courageous vision forward for radically transforming society to respond to the climate crisis. You can get to know Eric's work by following him on Twitter directly or checking out his book, The Future Earth, a radical vision for what's possible in the age of warming. Now we have Nivi Achanta. Nivi Achanta is the founder of the Soapbox Project, where she is on a mission to make social impact and climate action easy for busy people. She writes an excellent weekly newsletter called The Change Letter, where she offers up bite-sized climate action plans. And she as well hosts an online community where she allows sustainability-minded people to convene and make meaningful change together. Nivi joined me for a podcast recording to talk about the process of building an online community dedicated to taking climate action. And she as well talked about how she turned her own climate anxiety into climate action. You can get to know Nivi's work by checking out her Change Letter or as well listening to our full podcast recording on building community around climate change. And then we have Saul Griffith. Saul Griffith is an inventor and an engineer and one of the leading advocates around widespread electrification. He's author of the books Electrify and The Big Switch, and as well founder of the organization Rewiring America. Griffith received a PhD from MIT and works with government agencies, Fortune 500 companies, and more in efforts to help others understand and act on building a new clean energy infrastructure and decarbonization plan. You can get to know Saul's work by checking out his book Electrify or as well watching this 12-minute video where Saul explains the plan for electrifying America. And finally, we have Gregory Landua. Gregory Landua is one of the founders of Region Network. Region Network is a platform built to reinvent the economics of agriculture, often as it's the farmers and the planet that suffer any and all consequences of fragility in the food and agricultural industries. Landua and Region Network want to change that. They're on a mission to change the typical incentives found in the agricultural supply chain. They want to put ecological health and as well the equity of those who attentively care for it at the forefront. With the quantity of emissions that are created by the agricultural industry, Gregory and Region Network see themselves as building the infrastructure for reversing the climate crisis. You can get to know Gregory's work by following him on Twitter directly, or as well checking out our full interview with him about the mission and vision of Region Network. Every single one of these environmentalists and advocates offers up a unique reason to admire them. But surely admiration or inspiration aren't the end goals. It's boldness, it's courage, it's action. Every one of us needs to be active if we're to avert catastrophe, or most importantly, create a habitable and equitable planet for all of us, now and for future generations to come. It's not about doing the one thing that solves and addresses the climate crisis. It's about doing something. And doing the something that feels like the right thing for you. And yes, use the examples of the climate leaders and the environmental activists that I shared here for inspiration. Specifically for the inspiration to find what gets and keeps you moving in the direction towards a sustainable, equitable, and more just future for all.